Thank you very much. And can we approve the consent agenda, please?
I move that we approve the consent agenda for April 14.
Okay, that's been moved. Any seconds out there?
I second it.
Okay, thank you very much. It's moved and seconded. Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, that passes. Thank you very much. No special presentations. Unfinished business. Appoint budget committee member. Marilyn, we haven't had any other volunteers at all, have we?
You're on mute, Marilyn.
You're on mute.
There you go. Did we get any last minute applications? Okay, we still can't hear her, but she's shaking her head no. So we didn't get any.
Okay. Well, if we have nobody step up, I suppose we just kind of go on to the next thing. But if somebody in the meantime volunteers or wants to take part, have them get a hold of us, because we could use another volunteer if they wanted to get in the middle of what's going on. Okay, approved superintendent evaluation. Did you want to read something ahead of time, Lacey, or do we have to have a motion ahead of time?
I would like to read the evaluation that summarizes what we discussed in our executive session. And then as long as that is a good summary, then we can make a motion to approve that.
Okay.
Okay, all right. The Creswell School Board of Directors has completed the annual evaluation of Superintendent Mike Johnson. Superintendent Johnson has been on the job since July 1st, 2019, and this evaluation is for the academic school year of 2020 through 2021. The evaluation process included 2 data sources. The first is Superintendent Johnson's self-evaluation presented to the board during a March executive session. And the second is the board's direct observations and experiences with Superintendent Johnson. The board speaks with one voice and provides one evaluation for the superintendent. This year's evaluation focused on 5 superintendent goals and 7 national standards of performance that were approved last fall by the board. The Creswell School Board believes Superintendent Johnson has been an effective and accomplished leader for our school district. This past year presented innumerable challenges for Superintendent Johnson, and he spent countless hours interpreting and translating hundreds of requirements from multiple agencies in order to establish an online academy, an online distance learning program, limited in-person instruction programs, and now a hybrid program for all our students. In building these new programs, the parent engagement with the district has increased significantly, and we're challenging Superintendent Johnson to continue to find ways to keep this higher level of engagement over the coming years. Over the past year, he's continued to lead with a consistent message across all schools. His implementation of widespread technology throughout all grades was phenomenal, and his use of data systems to focus improvements and growth in our learning systems is to be commended. Mike, we want to thank you for your dedication to our district and for your leadership in adapting our schools to a constantly changing environment.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. We get a motion to we approve the evaluation.
I move to approve the superintendent evaluation.
Okay, it's been moved. Do we have a second?
I second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand. We got it. Thank you very much. And thank you, Mike. Thank you very much for what you've done. Okay, moving right along. New business discussion, budget calendar.
So you approved a budget calendar that I proposed, I believe in November. It might have been around November. And Chanel has prepared a more detailed budget calendar that aligns to those dates in that calendar that you approved back at that time. So what you'll see here is a very detailed, I mean, very informative calendar with our budget committee folks on it, listed on it. So anyway, we just wanted you to see that and have that information at your disposal.
Great, thank you.
Any questions or from anyone?
No, I don't have any. Anybody? Okay, if there's no questions, Mike, you want to talk a little bit about the budget assumptions?
Yeah, so we have some scenarios there. Well, let me look at something here. Okay, on the budget, the assumptions, if we go to the budget assumptions first before the sheet, we'll see what's going on with the state schools funds and what our revenue assumptions are here. We're looking at, in totality, we're looking at a $9.1 billion budget from the legislature. That's what's been approved so far. We need a $9.6 billion budget to maintain our current resources for our general fund. We, like other districts, have lost student enrollment. So we're down about 100 students. And that equates to quite a bit of funding in the end. With that 9.1 budget, that impacts us by about 10% in our general budget fund. And the scenarios that Chanel has put together in the other sheet is a description, if you want to go there. We've been over the budget assumptions in a previous meeting, but I wanted to bring them back to you to have a look at it. Well, I'll give you a minute to look at that first. Are we all on that budget assumptions for 21-22? So in that first one, you know, our enrollment is about 1,100, but you see it says the ADMW of 1438. That's what they're basing our school funding on per student, on 1438. And a weighted ADM is when they take into consideration poverty, special education, all the other needs, high needs that we have. So they weight it at one time or two times the student funding amount. So rather than increase the funding by 1, 2, or 3 times, they give you a higher number of students on the enrollment count. That's weighted in the funding formula. So you'll see a decrease of 101 students on that weighted formula from the previous year. And that reflects our student enrollment loss currently. What we know.
Mike, did you say this when I was reading and I didn't hear? 101 students is more than what our normal adjustment is from time to time, correct?
Yes.
And is that made up of, is this a COVID impact?
Yes. So these are, the majority of these numbers are withdrawals to go to homeschool or online charter schools. So we have 60, maybe 70 more kids in homeschool right now than we normally do in a year. So we're anticipating that when we get past COVID, they'll re-enroll in the district, or maybe re-enrolling now as we get into hybrid. We've had enrollments come back in since this since this estimate was put out. So we look to capture those kids back, and then those kids that are in the online academies, I don't know that they'll be coming back until we get clear of this virus spread. I think they've gone into a specific academy because they intend to be there as long as there's a health risk.
Sure.
I think that's true. I mean, I would assume that. And so we're talking about 20, maybe 25 kids there that are in charters. And so, so we'll recoup that number, that 100 number. We'll get a good majority of them back in by the fall because we're planning on a full schedule in the fall. We're not planning on a hybrid or a CDL schedule. So we're looking to run school like we run schools traditionally. A lot of that is dictated by the virus, but that's what we're planning. So we went over the reserves or what we have in carryover, about 2 million, and how we were able to do some cost savings over last spring and through this year of non-essential hires. We put a freeze on hiring. And so we were able to pull in over last year, last spring, and this year so far about 500,000 in cost savings. That 500,000 is a good number to keep in your head when we go and look at the next sheet. Remember, we were talking last spring about a cliff coming in funding and needing to have furlough days to be prepared for that. So we started immediately last year when we went into COVID to shut down and all that on how to cut costs and get some savings to prepare for a shortfall. And that shortfall is coming, it looks like, this next year. So that 500,000 means stability in our current services for us. We did really good there. And then you'll see our expenditure assumptions. So we want to roll up, we want to maintain the current service levels, and then use that cost savings or unexpended funding from this year to cover that that downfall in funding that's projected for next year. So we're good. We're good going into next fall.
Mike, when we move into the budget committee and you're preparing your budget and your budget message for that group, could you give just a couple sentences or a couple minutes time during that budget committee to talk about the school improvement grant and all the federal funding that's coming as a result of like CARES and those? You've talked with us, I think a meeting ago or 2 meetings ago, about the grants, and they're significant and you're able to make some changes for the district. So as you're preparing for the budget committee, because I'm leaving this page going, okay, our general fund, the state school fund is a little bit low, but thankfully we have those grants to help us continue to make some progress with some of our curriculum and goals. And so it presents a bigger picture. So that's just a thought on, for the budget committee, that would be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Keep in mind that the grant funding, those are one-time funds. So we don't keep them in our general fund assumption because that's soft money. But yeah, when we go into the budget committee about our future expenditures in those other areas of curriculum and facilities and all those things that come with it, yeah, we'll have that whole budget on the other side to cover those. That's how we maintain our current service level with our general fund.
Yeah, I think that's a good full picture. Thank you.
Okay, shall we go to the other form now on the scenarios?
Mhm.
So the the revenue forecast that came out is one of several that we'll see for the remainder of the spring. The next one is coming out on May 20th. And we're lobbying heavily right now in the legislature to get to that 9.6 billion. All superintendents send a report in to COSA to present to the legislature. I think it's tonight that they're presenting it on what 9.1 billion means to us in revenue. What the impact of that 9.1 billion would be in regards to how much funding, which for us is 995,000 difference, what you see there, 968,000. And when we look at furlough days and full-time FTE, what that transfers to. So when we're looking at FTE, what was 7.5, I think, FTE. When we're looking at, it's 21 school days or thereabouts, if we were to furlough for that amount to make up the difference. We have that 500,000 to help soften that blow, and we have some reserves that we can apply to this if that's necessary. We're hoping that on the 20th they come out with 9.3 or 9.6. Our hope is 9.6, but we're really thinking that the next forecast that they present has got to be at least 9.3. And then we need to work on them to get to 9.6 from there. So, there are a couple other factors. Our unemployment rate is going down. Our employment rate is up in the last month. So the forecast that they were projecting has already shifted within 2 months in employment and income taxes and all that revenue that comes into the state. So there's some light there, and they've got to take that into consideration when they're going to their next projection. You know, the district has done well to prepare for a rainy day. This isn't the worst one, but you know, we're in good shape we're prepared for this. We're not going to get caught in a downturn where we're going to have to start pulling people out of our system. And it's because of the good cost savings that the district has done prior to COVID and what we applied or implemented last year to get to this point where we're at. Other districts are not as fortunate by far. Not good. So we're looking for a better outlook coming in the next months. As long as the economy holds strong and we continue to rebound and stay out of a shutdown, then it looks better every month. That nasty bug, no friend of ours. Any questions on that?
Anybody have any questions? Okay, discussion, the 2021-22 draft school calendar. What were those dates, Mike? Just a few dates that were more or less critical that we needed to know about?
Yeah, these are the critical dates that people want to know right now, so they can start making plans for summer for next year.
Okay.
And so, you know, these are pretty much in concrete. We wanted to put these out there so that you could take a look at them and see when we were anticipating those times would be for the school year. And we're looking at other ways to do things as a system. So where we have early releases, late starts, and all that kind of thing, when we want to work together K-12 on curriculum materials to align, or to bring in new materials in alignment with the new standards of the state and such. I mean, we're going to need to do that work together as a system, pull in teachers from buildings and administrators to work on that with our consultants and also with the committees. We also have professional development that we've been working on with technology, and we want to continue to use that to our betterment and how we instruct our students. And so we need to do some work on bringing those high leverage technical strategies into our instruction and maintain that while we're in person in a normal school environment, which we would normally be. And then our professional learning communities and building leadership capacity across our staffs in our buildings and getting more teachers on board with this forward movement in best practices in instruction and applying that to the curriculum that we bring in, or curriculum materials. Also, they're going to need time to realign their curriculum to the new standards or bring the new materials in when that happens. So there's lots of work to be done, and we're trying to get some things aligned district-wide. And it makes sense for parents too, that one school has a late start and the other one has an early release in the same week, but on different days, and they can't coordinate. I mean, we're trying to make things more practical for us as a district, but also looking through the parent lens and how we can make some of these things more efficient for them too. But we, of course, will not reduce any instruction time. If anything, we're looking for opportunities to add instruction time to cover the lost instruction time that we've had over the last year and a half. So that's where the rest of the calendar is going to come into play. We're working on that at the building level now, and we'll have a proposal in May with that information on it.
Okay, great. Anybody have any questions?
You good with that?
Yeah, I think so. All righty. Moving right along, trustee reports. Candace, you want to start, please? No more dirty pants.
No, football season's over. No more football laundry at my house. Might need to buy a new washer after this season, but other than that, it should be fine. So I'm trying to remember what I've done since the last school board meeting. Multiple football games. We started softball practice, so I've been at softball practice the last couple weeks, which has been exciting and nice to see all the kids. And we have 27 girls, which, if anyone knows, for softball, that is a lot of kids on one field. So we're full. But I would say that's probably all I've done in the last month. Doesn't seem like very much, so.
Ashley, are you out there?
I am. I did the superintendent evaluation with everybody else, and that's all I have to report. I'm looking forward to being able to get out there and do more this spring and summer.
Okay. Lacey, you want to do it?
Sure. We've had our leadership meetings discussing different, emails and things coming to the board, preparing for the agenda. I have had the opportunity to watch the middle school football games and high school football games, which I've not played sports as a child or an adult. So this much intense sports stuff has opened my eyes a lot. I would like to tell Brandon, thank you. I've been on watching baseball games for Babe Ruth. I've been on our grounds a lot this past couple months. Brandon, you are so visible. Anytime somebody is needing something between volleyball games and the baseball field or the softball field or football stuff, like you're there. And we did have at two of our middle school fields, or two of our middle school football games, we had to have an ambulance called for two of them. One injury on our team and another injury at another game on the other team. And Brandon was right there, called the ambulance, got the gate open for him. So I just love that you are so visible and are present during the games. So thank you for everything that you're doing. And then I just wanted to put a plug in as Mike is talking about the budget assumptions and the difference between the 9.6 and the 9.1 budget for the state school fund. We have an opportunity as a board to send emails, phone calls to our representatives up in Salem. So now is the time to start emailing and phone calling. If you guys want me to put out all the emails of each of those people, or what a draft email would be, I'm happy to do that. I can send that to your school if that would help you with advocacy, because I think it's important for them to understand that we're watching. This is really important to us. You know, we passed a tax increase over the last biennium that helped us cover some of the gap. So we don't want to start backsliding. That's been my main message as I've been emailing them, like don't let this start slipping again. So if you guys want, I'm happy to just send a blanket email with some basic instructions, or if you want to call me or email, I'm happy to talk through, because I think this is an important part of what we get to do as a board, is advocate for us. So let me know how I can support you if you guys are willing to start doing some of that outreach.
I would like if you sent an email template.
Okay.
I think that could be helpful, at least for me.
I would
Okay.
like it too, Lacey.
Okay, I'm happy to. I love this part of my job, so I'm happy to do that. Okay, that's it for me, Mike.
Oh, okay. Deb?
Well, I haven't done much. I'm with Ashley. I did the superintendent evaluation, and that's pretty much all I've done. I've caught a couple things, sporting events online, and I'd like to second Lacey's complete admiration of Brandon and his presence everywhere. Does such a phenomenal job. And as a booster board member, I can tell you that he is on point all the time. And we just made a major purchase for the high school for the gym. So that's super exciting for kids coming back and seeing that. So that's about all I've done.
Debbie, I got to see the last football game where the scoreboard that was purchased for the middle school field. I'm not sure if that was school or booster, but it worked great. Everybody was so happy to have a scoreboard there. So that's cool.
Okay. I've been pretty busy here. Did the sidelines on last Friday's football game, which was really fun. Brandon, again, I thank you for that. That brings back a lot of memories. I've been talking to way too many attorneys in the last few weeks. Here in the last few days, you've got, I think, 3 or 4 different letters that Marilyn sent to you that we've had letters coming in. I've talked to the attorneys, and then you'll see copies of letters going out. So we do answer all the incoming mail. I've got a hold of Steve Kelly, and he's got a new, he calls it tool, but I don't know what, on a board self-evaluation, they're coming up with a new way to do that. And I'm not sure what it's all about, but I told him I'd sure like to see it, because I want to pass it on to you guys and we can take a look. And if we want to do something, we can. If we don't, that's fine. But he's going to come up with a new process. I talked to Krista at COSA, and they've developed a new superintendent evaluation, I guess you'd call it, system. And in the next day or so, I'm going to send it to all you guys and let you take a look at it. And where some of the questions we had, we're kind of little gray area on the definitions and so on. This thing is really, I think they did a really good job. And all I would ask is you take a look at it. And if we want to make some changes down the road, we can, but I think it's really a good form. Let's see. And then the other thing, this afternoon, I got the results of the investigation that's been going on. And I'm going to send that out either tonight or tomorrow to all the board members. And tomorrow I'm going to have Marilyn send out a available time thing with everybody to see if maybe next Wednesday or the Wednesday after that, we can have an executive meeting with Zoom and go over the results of the investigation. And I've talked to 2 attorneys on this, and we've got I've got a list of things that I need to follow just to make sure we follow procedure the way we're supposed to, and we'll be fine. But you'll be getting the investigation results, and you'll be getting the questionnaire, when are you available for time, and a Zoom meeting, it'll make it a little easier to get there, but I'll get that out to you too in the next day or so. And then other than that, that's about it for me. Okay, moving along, business manager. Anybody have any questions on that? Not hearing any. How about technology? Any questions for Joel?
Can I ask for something from Joel there?
Sure.
We made some recent purchases to increase levels of safety for our staff and students during COVID. You want to talk a little bit about those purchases?
Sure. We purchased some air purifiers, HEPA filters. We're deploying them now. The elementary school is 100% covered. We're moving into the high school and the middle school starting tomorrow. The head custodian and I were able to attend a training and informational put on by ODE regarding filtering and ventilation. And if you're ever bored and want to read the RSSL, there's a huge section about ventilation and air quality. And so we were able to fortunately purchase these HEPA filters, and we're putting them in all our workspaces and all the classrooms. We've not had anybody say, no, I don't want that. So it's been really good to see that being deployed. And we've been pretty happy with that. Am I missing anything, Mike? Is there anything else? There's been so many purchases and so many things that we've been doing. I know we're preparing.
Chanel can help with us. Are we missing anything there, Chanel?
I know that we are preparing for, kids coming back into the buildings. I mentioned this in my board report, but outside seating for students so that they can enjoy lunch outside. And we have covered areas both at the middle school and at the high school. High school, of course, has a courtyard that's covered, a good portion of it. And the middle school has a Tiger Terrace that's covered. They're not huge, but we're addressing those issues with the possibility of canopies and what have you. At the at the elementary, we have 2 covered areas, one adjacent to our gym. So we're pretty fortunate at the elementary school. So we feel fairly comfortable with the idea that we could provide outdoor seating. And of course, we're going into warm weather and spring. So that's going to make life a lot easier for our students and staff to be able to eat outside if they choose to. So we're pretty excited about that. So yeah, safety and keeping people well and healthy is our #1 priority.
So we're actually moving into an area where it's not, I would say a choice to eat outside isn't going to be the right term. They're going to be eating outside, and we're going to get some covers like canopies to put out there, nice big ones. And Joel has ordered 40 new 8-foot tables to accommodate the 6-foot distancing that you have to have for mealtime. And those 40 tables then will go to Creswell. And then we have 40 other tables that Joel will move out to Creswell Middle. And then we'll determine what the high school needs. But the high school does have some areas out there, and they've been working on a plan to add some tables to their outside under their breezeways. So things are in full motion as far as how we can accommodate that requirement, which is an obstacle for us to bring more kids on campus. So that's one area that we're addressing.
Hey, Mike, that 3-foot thing, have they said any more's been, they changed to that?
Yeah, we've done a lot of work on it. I have that in my report coming up.
Okay, I'm just curious. Okay, yeah, we can wait till then. I just wanted to curious what was going on with that. Okay, but
It's
Um,
also, you get a double whammy of it. You have it Mike's, but it's also quoted in mine. I actually cut and pasted from the RSSL. And the reason I did that was because it's interesting, the 3 foot and a 6 foot, what folks don't quite sometimes get is a 3 foot is for students, but staff have to maintain 6 feet, including instruction staff. So that's the challenge sometimes when you have a classroom that you can put 3 feet for desks, but the teacher has to maintain 6 feet from the student. So you still have to have that teaching envelope for the teacher. Plus you still have to have 6 feet in the hallway, and you still have to have 6 feet in the cafeterias. So 6 feet hasn't really gone away. It's just 3 feet in the classrooms. But again, all that seems to kind of sometimes change as things move along. So that's the latest path, the latest we have that we're going with. I'm sure Mike's mentioned that in his as well. But I wanted to tell you that it's cut and pasted actually straight from the RSSL in my board report.
Wow. Okay. All righty. Any questions for Joel? Okay, moving right along. Transportation. Any questions there? Okay, if none, how about special services? Any questions for Amy?
Mike, I think Joel wanted to add either something
Oh.
to his report or to
Go ahead.
transportation.
I'm sorry, Joel.
I
Go
did.
ahead.
I was just going to mention that I was going to caduce to the transportation department. They are, what doesn't get noted sometimes is how much movement we do of our students in the Creswell vicinity. We have a lot of special needs students that get transported to a lot of different programs, and our homeless folks that get transported from wherever they might be from to our district and to our buildings. And so we have, it's incredible how much traffic and how much movement the wheels are making on our buses and our vehicles. And I just want to give that praise to that group, that they do a great job out there. Our bus drivers do. And our type 10 drivers that are able to drive with just ones or twosy kids in the smaller vehicles. But sometimes I want to just point out that it's more than just driving kids to school, that we're moving them all the time to special needs programs. And we try to accommodate that as best we can. And they do a great job of it.
Well, thank you. Okay, any questions for special services?
I think I've got questions. I'm trying to form them, Amy. There's two. I've been tracking a lot of the headlines around different districts and what they're doing with state testing.
Mhm.
And I know we're not going to that other end of the spectrum in terms of like automatically defaulting everybody out and then you have to opt in, right? That's kind of what I've seen in the headlines.
Mhm.
It seems though, I bet things are changing though for us in terms of, I'm trying to remember what my kids did previously, where they have a couple chances, they have unlimited time to be able to complete the
Right.
test. Can you talk about what some of those conditions, how they may change?
Yes, so I should mention this will be finalized. We should hear 100% certainty by tomorrow morning. But this is the direction that we're going. So this is what we're rolling out to families and staff. I was on a meeting with the state this morning, and this is what they're feeling very, very confident in the direction. So we're looking at a shortened test. We're looking at limited number of tests as well. You'll see on my report, there's a chart there that indicates each grade level, starting at 3rd grade, ending at 11th grade. And we're looking at a maximum for our high school and some middle school students of 2 tests rather than maybe the upwards of 3+ tests that students are taking. Additionally, they're shorter tests. And so what we were directed to do this morning was we pick a date, we pick a window that we'll be offering this test or tests that will be offered for that particular grade level. We are offering the option to opt out, but if the the student doesn't show for that test, that is kind of a one and done. So here's your option to take it. We will provide transportation. We'll be partnering with families that are choosing not to have their student come into the building because these tests will only be offered on our campuses, on our 3 school sites. And so if we need to arrange for a Wednesday where we transport and or the parent brings the child in, we can arrange for a smaller amount of humans in the building that day to help accommodate the family. But it's pretty limited this year. And I would also add that the data, so typically this data would help drive perhaps extra supports with the school. So if they really were struggling with some of their assessments, the state would come in and offer some support, for lack of better words. And so this testing data, I'm still a little uncertain on how they will be using it, if and how they'll be using that data to support further decision making. But they are telling us that it will not be used to drive decisions about how they support our school districts, our schools specifically. And they're also saying that they will be sharing out reports to families. But again, we don't know how that's going to look either. So there's still a lot of uncertainties, and I'm sure more communication to come from the state in the next months to come.
How much time do you think it's going to take? Like if one child takes a test, are they limiting the amount of time, or is it still unlimited like it's been in the past?
If I'm understanding correctly, you still have the amount of time that you need, but they are giving what they think it will take a student to take. So they're giving us some rough numbers of what they are assuming it will take for a typical student to take that assessment, which, as I mentioned, is going to be much shorter. So we're looking at maybe 60 minutes versus 90 minutes or something of the such, if that makes sense.
The second question I had, I am super interested in the work that it looks like you guys are doing with Teresa Collins. Can you just give a little bit of a verbal overview of this? Because I think every time you talk, I learned something about special education. So I know there's a nugget that I'm going to learn from this. If you give just another little overview on, like, why are you bringing a consultant in? Like, what problem are you trying to solve, or what improvement are you wanting to continue to evolve, I guess?
So Teresa is employed through Springfield School District. She is a consultant that we've hired to help support the conversation, the guidance around collecting data, and helping provide some guidance around how we can streamline our K-12 process. And so when we look at how we support students, she will help guide the discussion and the thinking around, are we staffing it correctly? Are we providing the correct classes for these students, the right supports? Really, in special education, we use the term least restrictive environment. And so we're looking to support in ways that allow access to as much as a student is able to access, so general education. And so that may look like we push in supports, we provide accommodations, we help provide professional development to the staff to help support those students with special needs. And so what we're doing right now, in fact, we'll start next week with our elementary team. All teams have inputted into a document where they identify the specially designed instruction, and that's the instruction that's noted on each student's individualized education plan, or IEP. And so we put that into a data sheet. We then take that data and we identify, okay, how much are we actually needing? We're going to then move into an identifying level of need, so severity. So if we have a student that has significant learning barriers and or behaviors that really impact their learning, how can we best support? And so, for example, that may help us look at, oh golly, we need to add additional math sections or a different level of math support at the secondary level to help support our students. When we look at putting students in special education classes at the middle and high school level, there is a strong possibility that we are also impacting their graduation requirements for a modified versus a regular diploma. And so we want to be really careful that we are providing, again, that least restrictive environment that gives them the most access that they are able, that will allow them to propel to in hopes of a regular diploma, excuse me. So we'll be looking at that data in terms of how we drive our staffing, our class offerings, and of course, the level of support that we provide for students.
Great effort. Thank you.
I'm excited. I'm hoping it produces some good learning and direction.
Yeah, and I love what we are supporting with Miss Dumas and the Triple P parent classes. Those sound like awesome classes. Thanks for continuing to help that.
She's a driving force in supporting our community and families, and she's doing a wonderful job even of seeking outside support financially to help keep that work moving forward. She's doing a great job.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, moving on to admin. Mike, you said Amy was not here tonight?
Right.
Okay, anybody have any questions for the elementary school for Mike? All righty, not hearing any. Julie, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Well, really good. In about a minute and a
Excellent.
half, what have you been up to?
Schedules, and more schedules is really, and the RSSL, don't forget that. So, as you can see in our report, we're doing our best to continue implementing our hybrid with in-person instruction, having kids who are home Zoom into those grade level classes, and continuing our academy. And then all students in CDL or hybrid are doing their CDL courses online at home. We also have our former Lippy kids staying for what we're calling RTI Tier 2, Response to Intervention. And so those kids are actually staying on campus when the rest of the kids go home in order to use our internet and access their CDL courses online. And what will be coming home Friday is a letter to families about additional hybrid time and moving to more in-person instruction. Right now, our tentative date is May 10th, and our goal is to be in person 4 days a week from roughly 8 a.m. to 2:15 each day for in-person instruction, with kids remaining in their cohorts but moving between classes, where we can just have them on campus for more hands-on learning. So we're really excited about that, and a letter will be going home to families Friday or Monday, depending on how many envelopes we get stuffed with report cards.
Great, thank you. Any questions for Julie? All righty, hearing none, thank you very much. Jenny, what have you been up to?
Same thing, I think, as Julie and probably Amy. Just schedules and changes with the RSSL just actually bring some excitement. With the 3 feet social distancing, we were able to send out a letter, actually 2 letters today, because I probably should tell the students when they're going to start. My first letter did not include that, so there was a little confusion. It was very clear in my head, so I don't know why they didn't get it, but so we are going to be able to move to getting all students back in who want to come in. Our classrooms are really small, so we were really restricted by the 6 feet, but with the 3 feet, we can get the students who would like to be in person, all back in person 4 days a week in the afternoon. So we're going to be able to make the shift. For those students who want to stay in comprehensive distance learning, we'll do that in the morning. And then those who would like to come in person will be able to do that in the afternoon. So we are excited to start that on Monday. Friday is, of course, a grade day, so there's no school. And I'm looking out the window right now, just watching our custodians moving desks for us and getting the classrooms set up. So that's kind of been the big sort of development as of this week. So we're excited to get that started.
Great. Oh, thank you very much. Anybody have any questions?
I want to keep thanking the principals for the reports. I love seeing the attendance numbers in there and knowing kind of at least one of the obstacles or successes that you're all seeing, because the attendance numbers look really high for all 3 schools. So thank you for continuing to outreach individually to students that may be struggling. I really appreciate the effort that you all 3 do with that.
Oh, thank you. Brandon, I have a quick question before we go to Mike. What sports are coming up now? Are we?
We are in spring, so our traditional spring. So baseball, softball, track, tennis, and golf.
Okay.
So JV softball had their first game tonight. They went to Thurston. I just got word they lost 12-11 in the bottom of the 7th. So,
Oh no.
Definitely a good game. And like Candace said, we have 27 girls. So we have a full JV softball team, and they got a full schedule. And we're playing some big time opponents: Sheldon, Springfield, Thurston. So super excited about that. But yeah, traditional spring for now until the beginning of May.
Okay. And then May, is that basketball get a shot this year, or is that done?
Well, technically, the guidance hasn't been approved for basketball or wrestling yet. We are hopeful that that's coming in the next couple weeks. But yeah, basketball practice, if we're allowed to play, would start May 10th and then run about a week past the end of school. So kind of their 5-week or 6-week season right there to the end of the school. And then we'd start right back in summer. And then theoretically, hopefully start fall on time in mid-August with traditional fall sports.
Okay, all right, well, thank you. Okay, Mike, you're on.
Okay, you've all had an opportunity, I'm sure, to look at my activities. If you have any questions about those activities or anything, I'll answer any of those first. That's the lightest part of the presentation. Anything there? Okay, so let's look at the hybrid attendance graph that we have there. That one says hybrid attendance, and when you open it up, it says for the week of April 5th. Do you see that graph? So a little explanation about this graph. So the blue would be for the students that are in hybrid, and the orange, I believe, are the students that are in CDL. And so we're looking at 2 months here consecutively. So this is, or 2 weeks when we started CDL district-wide or in-person hybrid district-wide in the blue. Oh, sorry about that. In the blue, that's how many were in person. And in the orange is the second week of April 5th. Sorry about that. And so pretty consistent numbers there. The middle school did have a shift though in the second week. That's good news. And what we're looking forward to in the next weeks coming is really a significant shift to get away from that 25% of our students that are in CDL and get them in person. That helps us get more instructional time or longer instructional days in the building. The more we can get that CDL number down. So that's where we're at, but a little bit of history behind that is, in February is when they adjusted the metrics. That's when they revised the metrics. And we shifted into hybrid K1. That was the rule. You had to start with the lower grades first. So since February, mid-February, kinders and first grade have been in hybrid. And we were rolling that up as we were required to get to the middle level. But then in March, right before spring break, the governor prepared her order, or sent out her order to go to hybrid. So then we did a pivot there right after spring break to bring hybrid in and get our plans updated and all the arrangements and our operational procedures and protocols to go to hybrid. And so we started rolling hybrid out at the secondary level after March. And then within 2 weeks, another announcement from CDC about going from the 6 foot to 3 foot distancing. So another pivot to get to another shift in instructional mode. And so here we are. Now this is, mid-April, and we've had 3 shifts coming at us in 2 months or so. And quicker than we can make plans to a shift, we got another shift on the heels of it. So it's been pretty exciting around here in these parts in our schools, but we'll make some sense of that here in a few minutes. Any questions on that graph? If I didn't confuse you, I sure am thankful for that. Okay, let's go to the next graph, the hybrid in-person CDL COA enrollment. And that's just breaking it down into the groups of how our enrollment is in our district. And so in the blue, you have the in-person numbers, and then CDL is in orange, and then the academy is in the gray boxes down there towards the bottom. So you can see the numbers that we're wrestling with bringing more kids in, or trying to get more kids in the classrooms so that we can have longer instructional days. in person. And the reason that is because we're required by the RSSL to maintain comprehensive distance learning for the students that want it. And that requires about 5 hours a day of instruction, 2 with a teacher, or 2 to 3, 2 to 2.5 with a teacher, and the other 2.5 online, independently. So if we have our teachers teaching in person, and they also are teaching CDL, 2.5 hours to those, see, it's a lot, it's a little too much to pull it all off. Yes, Lacey.
Do you have any insights as to why the CDL percentage at the high school with those kiddos are staying higher than the other 2 buildings?
I can answer that if Mike doesn't mind.
Go ahead.
Because we are, I hope that increases on the 29th. The biggest reason is because we, with the 6 feet social distancing, could only get, in some cases, 9 kids in a classroom, 10 kids in a classroom, 14 kids in a classroom. So we had to do the A-B days. So some of the kids are coming A, some of the kids are coming B. In my opinion, kids coming 2 days a week was not enough instruction for their 4 core classes, especially since we crammed them into a 4x4 schedule and they're working on a semester's worth of, a year's worth of work in a semester. So we kept all of our students in CDL in the morning so that they would have both of those learning opportunities. So that's why our numbers look a little bit skewed. Everybody stayed in CDL so that we could keep those instructional hours up. And then then we had about 171 who would come in the afternoon between those 2 groups. So 80 to 90 on each of those days. So hopefully now that we've been able to shift and make it a clean shift, we'll see those in-person numbers go up next week.
That makes sense. Thank you for walking me through that.
Sure.
Any other questions on that graph there for anyone? Okay, let's go to the ODE updates. It'll take a minute to upload for you.
Mike, as this is uploading for folks, just one more question on the previous graphs. Are you expecting the kids, like the percentage that you're seeing in the elementary and the middle school with, 30 or 40 kids staying in CDL, are you expecting them to stay, or do you see that as a movable percentage?
My prediction is that will change. They'll shift more to in-person as we extend the length of the instruction time. Right now where you have 2 hours of instruction in the building, 2 to 3 hours, parents are having to drop them off, pick them up, take them to childcare, do all that stuff, where they had a schedule with childcare already prepared with CDL. But now where we're extending the learning experience on a daily basis and getting opportunities to have more kids in school, I think that's going to shift. We're going to see it. I predict that we will. So ODE updates, I just kind of condensed this slide deck for you for information that's really kind of current and pertinent. So you see the key updates, and then we get to the physical distancing shift, which is the big conversation around the state, actually the country, because that 3-foot change, that change in social distancing or distancing in schools was like, what? So anyway, I'll just kind of briefly go over that. You can look at the slides, but I have a little narrative for you. So our goal is to increase on-site in-person learning time with teachers and students. That's our goal. We want to do it with safety. That's our priority, right? The senior leadership of the district, myself and the school board, administrative leadership team, these folks here in front of you, and Amy Halley, who's not here. The CEA leadership and teachers, our staff, align to this goal. So when they announced this, when CDC announced this, that put superintendents into a kind of a research mode. And then we had to set up steps of how we might be able to use that if we could. In some schools, you can't. It just won't fit 3 foot. I mean, you get too many obstacles. But I'll go through my process. I kind of named that process when I sent it out in the letter to the community a couple of weeks ago, letting them know that we were reviewing this and considering what we might do with it. So to date, I've conducted research on the implications of moving to 3 foot distancing. I processed my findings with the district administrative team to identify obstacles to increasing in-person learning time and shifting from 6 foot to 3 foot distancing. I've shared my research findings and the identified obstacles with the CEA leadership. We had a discussion about that. Currently, principals are having discussions, or have been having them today, having discussions and developing plans with their building at the building level for blueprint adjustments, or with their blueprint committees and their staffs. Parents are, or principals are informally surveying parents of students who are in CDL to see who would be interested in coming to in-person if we were shifting the length of our instructional days or adding more days to the week. And principals will be sending letters to parents and students with their plans and schedules on what changes will come about with this accommodation, with going to the 3 foot thing. So the shift from 6 to 3 feet provides us with an opportunity to increase in-person learning time. However, there are obstacles that we need to resolve, and we've been working at these, and these are identified between what all the folks on this screen here, the A team. Transportation, that was our first obstacle. If we increase the number of students attending in-person learning, then we will increase the number that we transport to schools on buses. Natural, I mean, that makes sense. The problem is that we're still limited to the number of students we can have in the buses to 3 foot distancing. We didn't increase buses, we're just increasing kids. So transportation, that's one obstacle that we have to resolve. That was processed with the transportation department and Joel, and Sarah informed us that as long as we stagger our schedules of starting times and ending times, they could accommodate more students in transportation, or transporting more students. So we're working out those schedules. Mealtime, the physical distancing requirement on RSSL remains at 6 foot distancing. So we can have 3 foot distancing in the classrooms, but at mealtime, when they're eating, they have to be 6 foot distance. So that presents an obstacle to us. We do not have that amount of space in our cafeterias. We can't, that when you're at 6 foot, that gives you almost nothing. I mean, 60 kids maybe. If we increase the number of students in a classroom, then if we go to 3 foot in a classroom, then we have to look for other areas for students to have lunch, or other ways to stagger half a classroom to have lunch while the other half of the classroom is in the classroom and one half may be at recess, or using the outside areas, or turning the gym into a cafeteria along with the cafeteria and maybe the boardroom or whatever. I mean, we have to figure out a way to get all those kids at mealtime to eat with 6 foot distancing. And then CDL, we are required to provide CDL with the CDL guidelines. So as I explained earlier, that's the 5 hours a day. 50% of that has to be with the teacher every day. So that presents a problem then of how that teacher is going to teach in person for longer periods of more than 2 hours or 2.5 hours, and online for 2.5 hours. So if we extend the in-person learning time to 4 hours and they're teaching 2.5 hours online, well, that's not going to work out. That's too much on a teacher load. So we have to figure out a different way to do it. That's not the solution. So we've been working at that. Some of the benefits of moving to 3 feet or using that where we can, where it works for us or where we need it, at the high school level is getting students in front of teachers 4 days a week rather than 2, and for longer times. At the middle school, it changes, would allow us to have more students on site for in-person learning and increase the instructional day. And then at the elementary level, it'll allow us to run, and we'd be able to take away the AM, PM cohorts and just run straight 1 cohort a day for a longer period of instructional time. The district administrative team will continue to move forward with our goal to have more kids in person in schools with increased days and increased daily learning time. We're committed to that. That's all the work we're doing right now. Well, that's not all we're doing, but that certainly is our priority. And it's that's the focus. So with our new movement, with the progress that we've made, I'll be putting together a letter and sending in those updates out to the community so that they know that we're focused and we are bringing in, implementing more instructional days and more instructional time per day. And that the principals will be sending out their updates this week or by the beginning of next week to parents of their students and informing them of the changes and updates with the schedules and how we're moving towards this goal, or each building is, because each building is unique in how they're going to change their times, their schedules, and the procedures of how they're going to address CDL while we're increasing in-person time and in-person instructional days. And that's a mouthful on that one. That's what I got for you. Unless you have questions, then I'll give you something else. But yes, Ashley.
I have a question. As the case counts are going up, and it sounds like Lane County is going to get put back on some restrictions next week, from what I understand. Does this, I'm assuming that affects the 3-foot distance rule for the middle school and the high school, since it has to be less than 200?
Not, well, they give us grace on that. So if we already are moving into, if we've already stated we're moving in that direction and the metrics were in the green, we are in the green.
Okay.
So we're allowed to make that move, even if it moves and shifts to the orange.
Okay.
Unless we have an outbreak in our school. If we identify an outbreak in our school, then we switch back to the 6 foot, and then we have to start doing some quarantine. I mean, we'll
That's
go.
right. Okay.
But we'll back.
I remember that part now. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and by the way, on that's a good question, Ashley, because what would happen if we started to have cases in our schools is I contact Lane County Public Health directly and start working with them. That they assess our situation and they'll advise us on whether or not we need to move to 6 feet or we need to move to CDL, period, as a school.
And one last question. Was it 5 cases or more was considered an outbreak?
Or 2 in a group.
2 in a group. Okay, thank you.
And that could change next week. I don't know. So we'll keep up with that one because that's really of interest to us right now as we're moving closer together or bringing more kids into schools. But we have good protocols. We've been tested. And it's been over a month, almost 2 months at the elementary level. And, our kids are doing a great job. Our teachers are managing the situation. They're practicing safe safe protocols. I mean, it's really going, I mean, better than anticipated by far. Okay, any more questions on that one? So we're making.
Appreciate all the information, Mike. It's great.
Yeah, thank you. We're doing great. That's a lot to chew on, but man, I'll tell you what, this team up here on this board is figuring it out. They've got plans dialed in. They're working out with the staff and implementing some strategies and some other accommodations to make this happen. It's a lot of work on their end, a ton on their end to do this. I mean, that's like starting the school year plan over again for the third time in 3 months. It's wild, but it's worth it when the kids come in. Moving on down in the slide deck to the assessment waiver status, we had a little conversation on that. You asked the appropriate person. That was Amy Aguero on that one. But did you have any questions? Well, I guess the thing that's not outlined in this is the movement about with districts who are kind of changing their policies or the policies of the assessment rather than opt out, flipping that to an opt-in. And that opt-in move is really in violation of Division 22 standards. And that's a willful violation. It's not by necessity or an emergency. It's just that's what they've just, not that it's wrong. I wouldn't criticize anyone for that move because I'm not, well, I'll say my own personal opinion about the testing itself right now. I rely heavily on that data to make instructional decisions, to make supports and put them in the right places. Amy was describing that earlier for our SPED students, but that data right there helps us with a lot of instructional information so that we can make intentional moves to impact student achievement. But this data isn't going to help us do that this year. It's not going to work. So anyway, it's a federal requirement and we'll see what's happening, but you got the news. I sent it to you in the article today about Portland Public and Salem Kaiser. And, Ashland is the one that flipped the policy from opt-out to opt-in. And there's kind of a movement out there of where people are finding their own options. But for now, we're staying the course to be in compliance with the state and the federal level. Are you saying something, Lacey? Because I think you're muted.
Sorry, my son is trying to warm up his dinner and I'm laughing watching him trying to do it without his mama helping him.
Okay.
I apologize.
Oh, no worries. I thought I was being funny.
We can all relate. It's okay. We've all been in meetings where very similar things have been happening.
I know. He's trying to do such a good job of taking care of himself.
Okay. Any questions on that one? So our principals and our parents out there have been asking questions on graduation ceremonies and things that they can do and not do and what have you. And so the state has come out with some guidance on graduation ceremonies and promotions. And so it mirrors what happens in the community with large groupings or restaurants or what have you. So we're following that guidance in our planning. And we'll be creative on how we can have the best experiences for our kids and parents in Creswell. So they're coming up with those plans and you're probably hearing about them at the different building levels. Any questions on that one? Just a quickie right there. Key federal relief funding updates. I went over that with you in the last board meeting. Just to remind you, CARES Act ESSER 1, we've already expended. That was about $90,000 for us. We used that to get through the spring and the fall in all of our purchases for CDL. And then, or our COVID accommodations. And then ESSER 2, that we're working on that. That brings to us about 400,000, a little over, to our district emergency relief there. And then ESSER 3, which is meant to work for us for the next 2 years, brings us 1.2 million. And they've just come out with the ESSER 3 guidelines for expenditures. Chanel shared that with me today. So it's nice to know we have that behind us to support us if something terribly goes wrong or wronger than where we're at. Any questions about those? So the budget committee will see those in a separate budget. And then you see the variables. We'll just skip past the other one on the Biden stimulus bill and go to the last slide there, the variable shaping guidance for 21-22. So we're starting to figure out what we're going to do. Well, we've already figured out in the fall that we're going to open up school as we normally would unless we're directed differently. Right now, we know how to shift to any instructional mode. We can go straight to CDL, we can go to hybrid. Well, we haven't had full in-person yet. So we'll be planning for that. And then if we need to shift to one of the other instructional modes, we will. The variables, the variants, spreading like wildfire out there somewhere in most places. And so that's the unpredictable thing right now. That's kind of the wild card. We don't know how far that's going or how much we can manage it with our vaccines. And then the vaccination, trying to keep pace with the spread of the virus and vaccinating. Now we're down to 16 years and older. So as of next week, if you're 16 and older, you can get a vaccination. You can schedule one. And then the cases, we need to monitor the metrics and where they're at in the summer, where we get to open for the fall, because the cases dictate what the governor will do as far as what mode we're going to be in the metrics. And the shift to local decision-making, or the shift to shift, and wherever it shifts from there, you know, they go from governor directive to orders to local decision-making. Even under the directive orders, there's still local decision-making. I mean, there's like, who's accountable? Well, of course we are, regardless. So we'll see what happens with that, and then anything that comes out from the federal level. And with equity, how can we provide the best education possible for our kids, with whatever mode that we're in? And we think we have that one figured out. We have systems in place. Stay with the constants, and then other considerations for us that could change what we're doing. Any questions on that? Trying to stay a year ahead or a month ahead of everyone. we can't get a year ahead to save our lives. One piece of good news that just came through that I want to share with you. We've been having our dream of summer school and bringing summer school in and having kids, giving them the opportunity to learn, have extended learning options. And the Biden Act, CARES Act, has brought money forward to states, federal money into states for those extended learning opportunities. And summer school is one of those that now have been targeted to provide funding for. And so at 2 levels, K-8 and then 9-12. So credit recovery at 9-12. This is the stuff that we've been talking about or for summer school to bring in. And these grants help us support what we want to do with our summer school model or our vision. We need to develop the model, but our vision. So for Creswell, for high school, this grant is 75% funded. So that means that we have to pay 25% of whatever the total cost is in order to get the 75% of the funding out of the grant. So the state will fund us up to $144,000 for high school, summer school, credit recovery, and extended learning. That if we reach that 144,000, we'd have to, the 25% cost to us would be 48,000. That 48,000 we would take out of ESSER 3. So we use a grant to pay our end for the grant to get the grant. And then at the K-8 for summer enrichment academic support, the state grant brings 192,000 and change. Our cost, if we were to use all of that, would be 64,000. And that would total 256,000 for K-8. And that money, again, that 64,000 would be the 25% that we pull out of our ESSER 3 grant to apply to get this grant funding for summer school. So ESSER 3 brings 1.2 million to provide summer school at a cost of $450,000. Would cost us $100,000 out of that ESSER 1.2 million. Did I say that right? $100,000 out of 1.2 million to get 450,000 for summer school funding. That's amazing.
Mhm.
I don't know how we'd spend that much money, but I'm going to try. So those are my updates.
Anybody have any questions for Mike? Anybody have any comments for the good of the order? We're going to get out early tonight. What, Lacey? You're on mute.
Sorry, that time I really did mean to unmute when I was talking. You mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, you've got back a report that we need to discuss next week in executive session. Should we check with everybody to make sure that next Wednesday will be okay for that executive session?
Well, what I'd like to do is send out a survey for next Wednesday and the Wednesday after that.
Okay, thank you.
Reason being, we'll talk to everybody involved, but also I want to talk to an attorney about if she can look over our shoulders
Got it.
during the meeting. So I want everybody to get a chance. We'll mark some times and stuff and see what times but we're thinking next Wednesday or the Wednesday after probably.
Okay, and so Marilyn or Joel will send us a survey monkey so that we can respond when our available. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
You may have said that at the beginning, Mike, but I forgot, so I apologize.
Yeah, I'll try to get it done tomorrow, but I'm going to be with customers all day, so it might be Friday morning. But I've got a bunch of stuff to send out: the results, the super evaluation forms. There's a bunch of things I'll have coming out to you guys, but we should have everything by Friday. And that way you'll have plenty of time to read through everything. And then I'll have a format of instructions from the attorney because there's a lot of steps you have to follow. And I just don't want to mess up. So we'll get all that out to you by Friday.
Sure. Okay. Thank you, Mike.
The only other thing I have is board requests in the future. If anybody has anything you want to discuss or bring up or whatever in the next few meetings, don't be bashful. Give us a call, an email or something. And we've got a budget process is going to start in May, I guess. So be aware of those dates. And if there's nothing else going on, I guess that's it. We'll adjourn the meeting. You guys all have a great evening and thank you so much for what you guys do. I really appreciate it. Bye-bye.